Good afternoon. I'm Anne Nutt and I'm chair of the patient panel, and I'm joined today by my vice chair Diane and our director of patient experience Shahid. We're going to run you through a conference that we held. Next slide, please. The patient panel has adopted this as their battle cry for 2020 to try and instill in everybody: if quality is at the heart of everything we do, it must be understood from the perspective of patients. Hence, that was the theme that we took our conference forward with. Next slide, please. This is a purely patient-led conference. We received some funding by the Sustainability and Transformation Partnership. We then approached our local West Essex CCG, who agreed to match fund, and we worked in collaboration with our local college and cancer services within the hospital, and with support with information and planning from Macmillan. Next slide, please. This is the area that our hospital covers. We can go up to the very wealthy sort of areas up towards Cambridge, and we go right down to the other end of the scale towards the London boroughs, covering Essex and into Hertfordshire. Next slide, please. What were our aims? It's very important to have an aims of what you want to particularly do. So we chose to use the National Cancer Patient Experience Survey to deliver a patient-led event, identifying what matters to local people. And it's quite important that when you get the survey results, it's not in the human element that goes with it. It was to produce a report of recommendations. It's extremely important. As a patient and a service user myself, we're consulted on many times, we attend many events, but you never ever get any information or outcomes from the contribution you've made. So we were very keen to make sure that we did do a report and circulate it to everybody that attended and to a wider audience. We used existing mechanisms to implement change, including using current user groups. Next slide, please. Thank you. What we did, again, we delivered a conference. We chose 5 workshops which were linked to some of the areas that came up in the national survey: money matters, carers, management of side effects, life after the challenge, young people and cancer. Those were the very key points that people wanted to discuss when they attended on the day.
And I think one of the things to remember is that woven through all of those themes is the question of information, and not just information in the traditional sense. It was information from the perspective of patients. We all know about historic attempts at developing patient information. There's been the expert patient program, there's been long-term conditions groups, but this was about actually having patients lead on developing and creating the information so that actually it felt more like a layperson, a human voice, I guess you might describe it as, human-centered healthcare, I guess you might describe it as.
And what we did was, again, it's a pathway for people. So we wanted to engage with our general practitioners. So that on one of their shutdown days, with a number of students from Harlow College, we attended the shutdown days and carried out a survey of GPs. And we were very impressed with the honesty that they gave with their answers. And as you can see from the side, we also had a graphic artist present that went around the room and did a large number of slides for us about how people were feeling and things that were up for discussion. Next slide, please. Thank you. We work through current user groups. We have a very active Chinese community. We have made contact with the Islamic Centre. There is a main Harlow ethnic minority umbrella organisation. We spoke to Young Concern. We spoke to Essex County Council Youth Services and the Prince's Trust to develop the user group membership. And I think what's quite important, that for the first time we met some of these groups, And since this conference, we've been involving them in a number of other projects that we've been working on. We also established other groups and feedback from the community to use by the existing groups as well.
And I think that cartoon image, it kind of emphasizes that question of actually the idea of it matters to me. The questions that we think about as public institutions sometimes aren't the same questions that patients want to know about, and we've got to develop our information pathways for patients in a way which centers around them. Very often we develop our pathways in a way which centers around services, and this was really something we wanted to push forward on. So as you'll see later on in the slides, we began this project in 2018, and we've continued to work through the findings from the conference, using the voices of the patients to turn those ideas into kind of a different way of managing and meeting those needs, particularly around patient information. If you go to the next slide. The findings of the conference were fed back to the team, and so one of the examples of change that we managed to implement was the evidence from all of those conversations in those 5 workshops which we ran was that mental health is not sufficiently well discussed and kind of supported after treatment is completed, because very often in the living with and beyond conversations and events, people are left to deal with many of the physical symptoms like breathlessness and perhaps financial issues, but the issue of psychological impacts, the long-term effects, are not necessarily dealt with. And so as a result of that, we've incorporated mental health into our sessions post-treatment. If you go on to the next slide. So I think we've created 4 different videos as a result of this work, which are centered around patient stories. One of the stories was a young man with 2 daughters. His name's Ben, and he talked very much about he had colon cancer. He was misdiagnosed with IBS 4 or 5 times after going to the GP, and it's only after being extremely persistent, despite what we know about the health-seeking behaviours of men who tend to avoid accessing healthcare, he had to really push in order to get diagnosed and in order to get a proper investigation. And this kind of aligned with the evidence that we heard in the conference, that many men feel that they are a minority group in the sense that their needs are under-fulfilled, underserved, and that really connected with the minority groups we spoke to in the wider conversations, the 16 groups who've been involved in all the other conversations around the conference and this project. So if you go to the next slide. So this is one of the resources we've created as a result of all that work. It's just been completed, and we're launching it together with our cancer board and our colleagues next month.
I had a feeling something was wrong. It's different for everyone, but I had so many tests, scans, x-rays, bloods, and finally a biopsy confirmed my worst fear. Not even my experience as a healthcare professional could prepare me for the news. Nothing can prepare you for being diagnosed with cancer. It's such a shock. You think, is this really happening to me? You wonder, how will I tell my family, my friends? Sometimes breaking the news to loved ones is harder than hearing it for yourself. Once you start to accept the diagnosis, the treatment comes on quickly. The key to getting through this is the support you receive from your friends, your family. The consultant and clinical nurse specialist are there to help you pick up the pieces and provide the right support at the right time. The treatment plan can be very challenging for some, whether that's surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or all 3. The side effects can be difficult to deal with. It's important to talk to your medical team. They'll do everything they can to alleviate the effects. You may lose your hair. Getting it cut in readiness can help you prepare. There are caps, wigs, scarves, lots of things available to help. I lost my hair, but for me, losing eyebrows and eyelashes was the hardest to bear. Stay positive. It's likely to grow back in time. Dig deep. You're stronger than you ever believed you could be. Some days will be good, others not so good. Cherish the good days. Your medical team will guide you through every step of the way. Remember, you're not alone.
So as you can see, that was a result of the findings of the conference, because the findings were very much about we would like to see better patient-centered information, the voice of the patient. And the interesting thing about that video is that the person who that patient experience was about, she was both a healthcare professional and a patient, and she could see both sides, and yet she felt as if going through that experience, she had that same moment on diagnosis of a blizzard of information, but not quite knowing where to go. And what we identified was that actually, if that person at the moment of diagnosis received some information which was the patient voice, patient-centered, about somebody who'd been through the same experience, that would really make an impact. And so that's the direction that we're taking things here at PAH.
And with the video, we've also produced a little card. It's about the size of a credit card, where they can keep a little bit of information that they need on a day-to-day basis, and reassuring little quotes, you know, where you have those down days that you can just read a positive statement. And this, as I said, will be launched on the 7th of October.
No, that's it.
I think, again, it's a remarkable event that was led by and for patients.